This is a systemic American problem. They help sustain the problem, and only they can really, truly fix it. I'm Pamela Newkirk. I'm the author of Diversity, Inc., The Failed Promise of a Billion-Dollar Business. So far, we haven't really seen, we're seeing sort of glimmers of change. We're hearing the talk, we're hearing the commitments to diversify these boards and diversify these workplaces. I'm only skeptical because we've heard the same kind of rhetoric for years, but I do think that the demand has not been greater in a generation for change, and I think it would behoove these institutional leaders to heed the call.
Pamela, if you would you just recap the basic argument of your book, Diversity, Inc.?
So basically, my book is interrogating the billions of dollars that institutions spend every year on this bloated diversity apparatus, and why the business of diversity is flourishing while diversity is not, that the needle has barely moved in decades. So I'm basically questioning why institutional leaders are doing the same thing year after year and expect different results.
What would you have them do instead?
Well, instead of spending money on a apparatus that over the decades has proven to fail to achieve diversity, why not just hire a diverse workforce? Why not just lean in and actually realize diversity? It's not as complicated as the elaborate superstructure of diversity would suggest.
Has COVID-19 made a difference to your argument or the conditions in which this is playing out?
Well, I think everything that has played out over the past few months has pretty much confirmed, what I wrote about, which is these disparities between the races on every social indicator we see. You could look at everything from income to housing to education, and we still have these really, really wide disparities, even though for years, especially since the election of Barack Obama, it's been argued that we live in a post-race nation. But for African Americans, in many ways, things have gotten worse over the past decade, not better. So I think what these past 3 months have done is they've crystallized many of the racial customs that we have normalized that are just, they speak to injustice, inequality, and to kind of a complacency around this kind of pernicious injustice.
41% of Black business people have lost their business in just the first 3 months of this epidemic, according to the National Economic Research Group in Boston. You've got something like 1 out of 3 of those businesses not likely to be coming back. Massive loss of wealth in the Black community that was already, as you said, a fraction of what was held in the white. Black businesses failing at a rate of twice that of whites. So I'm interested in your thoughts, not just of what individual companies might do, but what we as a society need to do if we want to preserve any racial diversity in our economy, let alone in our individual companies.
These institutions that are spending billions of dollars on failed policies, what if they reimagine how they invested in these communities that have totally been ignored, for decades, if not centuries? What if instead of all of these tech companies spending billions on failed diversity efforts, if they invested in urban schools or even in rural schools where there's a hunger for tech training, all of the things that are not just that these communities can't take for granted. So it's a way of reimagining, the wealth of this country and how so much of it is just squandered on failed policies and practices. The training is not getting us equality, it's not getting us diversity. And it's not just for jobs, it's for the way they invest. It's everything. It's folding people of color into the main of society in ways they still are not.